It is um, late afternoon out here right now in as the sun is starting to go down here in beautiful Arizona. And today it was one of those rare beauty days. I mean, it was so beautiful out here. I mean, a light wind, you might be able to hear it in the microphone. So if you hear that, I'm not even going to apologize for it. I mean, the weather is just beautiful out here today. And it's been about, I would say, in the high 70s all day. It was cloud cover, but, it's starting to break up a little bit, but still, it was a beautiful day. I mean, wow. And I wanted to spend as much time as possible out here today, and I did. And I'm getting ready to go back out again. I'm outside now, but oh my gosh, for those of you who are familiar with Arizona weather, we're known to be a very hot state. And we've already had quite a few warm days, but this is one of those rare beauty days. It's so nice out here. Wow, very good. Anyway, you guys, I don't want to keep you. I just want to jump on here just for a few moments and check in on you, make sure everybody's doing fine. I hope that all is well and everything. And hope you had a great weekend. We had a long weekend for quite a few of you because it was Easter weekend. We have some people who celebrated, others that don't. And but regardless of that, if you had an opportunity to spend time with your friends or family, I hope you made the most of it. And yeah. And so, anyway, as always, make sure you check out our website, sambatree.com. We have a lot of things out there for you. My wife and I, we were just looking at some things recently that we will be adding to the site very soon. Some brand new things we'll be adding. So I hope you guys check that out. Again, the website is sambatree.com. All right. Anyway, just really, really quick, you guys. Well, I'll try to make it as quick as possible. Um, this past weekend, um, I'm someone who, for those of you, if you follow this platform, you know that I really have a genuine love for black folks because I'm black, okay? And so the love that I give to people who look like me is really a reflection of what I give or at least try to give to myself. And so you can't love others if you have a hard time loving yourself. And so a lot of things that I do, that I talk about, that I write about, is a reflection of really how I, want to, how I love myself. You know what I mean? And those that are very close to me. And but it can be very challenging at times when you see what's going on out here. Um, and this weekend, there was a couple of things that I like kind of saw was I know one in Atlanta. It might have been two cases in Atlanta. There was this one story in Atlanta. It was just a festival. It was called the 404 Festival or something like that. I'm not familiar with it, but it was in Piedmont Park. And towards the end of the festival, um, one young girl, I think she was no more than 16 years old, got killed because of the shooting. And then there was another little girl, I'm trying to think, seemed like it was in Atlanta, it was somewhere in there, but this weekend there were quite a few black folks that were killed. Their lives are gone. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's this is becoming more and more of an accepted thing. And there are other things that I saw in those dogs. They're just having some fun over there, I guess. Um, what I'm finding more and more is like I'm being flooded with as much as I want to get on here and really talk about, and I do, I talk about like positive things. I try to turn when I bring up some of these negative stories. I try to, I sat down, I sit down constantly and I ask myself, well, how can I talk about this negative story, but talk about it in a way where I'm pointing to a solution to it. You know what I'm saying? And not just talking about how bad things are and all that, because everybody and anybody does that all the time, right? But how can we talk about these things in a way where we're pointing to a solution to it so that we don't have to repeat these same things over and over again? And I'm going to tell you the challenge that I'm running into a lot is being able to talk about these things with individuals, and those individuals always finding a way to shift the blame or to deflect to something else. You understand what I'm saying? And I know many of you do. You do understand exactly what I'm saying. It's like if you bring up, let's say, the shootings that I just mentioned, when I bring that up, depending, in certain spaces, the first reaction is, well, what about white people? Or what about them? What about that group over there? Or what about this? And then it turns into an attack where then you must be an immigrant, or you must be a tether, or you must be this, you must be that, and you're not one of us, and all of this other. You damn right. I'm not one of you. If you are someone who is accepting of that kind of behavior, no, I'm not one of you. And that's what we've done our whole series of videos on, talking about what is community, which means common unity, right? And I cannot be in common unity with individuals who normalize that kind of behavior. You know what I'm saying? Now, again, let's be clear. Again, as I've always said, that does not, the actions of a few do not reflect the many. Okay, so that applies to every group, including black people. There are many black people who are outraged at the bad behaviors and stuff that we see oftentimes posted on social media, on all these different platforms or wherever. And and there are many black folks who are outraged at these things, right? However, what I do find is that the culture, or what we call the culture, will still, even though we may be outraged, I still find a lot of people within the culture will still find some kind of way to defend it. So, in other words, I'll give you an example. We can point it out and say that's bad behavior, right? But if someone else outside of the culture points out and says, yes, that is bad behavior, then there's this tendency to feel like, wait a minute now, that is what we're supposed to call that out. You're not supposed to say anything. And then what ends up happening is it flips to where now all of a sudden you're defending this individual or these individuals. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so I'm seeing a lot of that, and it has me at a standstill because it's it's like this. Like, and I thought about this before I hit live on here. It's like there are things that must be addressed, there are things that must be talked about, but it's like you're talking to a group of people who are in a house that's on fire, but you have to talk to them in a way where they don't really realize that the house is on fire. You understand what I'm saying? Because if you point out that the obvious, that the house is on fire, then what happens is they'll get mad at you and blame you for the fire. You know what I'm saying? And so there's a lot of deflection. And if you looked at our other videos, we talked about, our more recent videos, we talked about how there are a lot of contributing factors to that. But what we focus on is just the nutritional part of it, and and the relationship between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. And don't get lost on that, y'all, because I really want you to dig in on that. And we've, like I said, please go back to the other videos where we talk about how your brain will, by default, switch into a defense mode when it is not getting the right nutrition. Okay. That's just, again, that's one one reason behind that. But there's other reasons, that other factors that contribute to that kind of behavior as well. And that's what we try to talk about here, is just the nutritional part of it. And what we're finding out is there are a lot of people who, there's an imbalance. I'm not saying that you're retarded or you're mentally disabled or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the things that you're feeding yourself, the echo chambers that you are engaged in on a regular basis, what it does, it reinforces this tendency to always deflect and to point blame into other directions. And what I'm saying is very dangerous. And literally every day, right before my eyes, I am seeing this thing that we call the black community continuously just going down, down, and down. Someone said my volume is low. Um, I don't know if I could turn it up any louder there, but it's probably because, again, the wind. But I'll hold it even closer here. But I'm seeing how more and more and more it's like this tendency to blame. And one of the things that we explained recently, we talked about how, what was it? The difference between talking to someone face to face versus talking to someone, or dealing with someone online. When you're talking to someone face to face, for example, there are a lot of things I'm able to communicate and do it well because you guys see my face, you see my eyes, you hear the tone of my voice, and you get what I'm saying. Hand motions, all of that stuff. You get exactly what I'm saying. However, but if you are just talking with someone and it's just text form, like on Twitter or social media, all of that gets stripped. All of those cues get stripped. And so what happens is it's a lot easier for people to get offended. Do you understand? And that's why it becomes very dangerous when most of the time you engage with real people, quote unquote, is on social media, because what happens is you just automatically go there. And we're seeing a lot of that, and it's getting worse. It's getting very worse. Social media is a big factor right now in the destruction of the relationship between men and women. We can talk about feminism, and on this platform, we've talked all about it and going through the history of feminism, womanism. We've done that in great detail. But it's really comes down to things like social media. In social media, it strips away a lot of the personal communication face to face. Now, we're doing face to face here now, but I'm talking about physical, being around each other. You know what I mean? Hearing each other out, being patient with one another. I'm not saying those things don't happen. I'm just simply saying it doesn't happen enough. And the things that we do talk about when we are together, we may talk about a lot of things, but are we using that time to really address some of these very deep issues that are creating these wedges between each other? You understand what I'm saying? This is just YouTube to me is just a starter point to get people talking. But ultimately, you have to start engaging with people on a one-to-one basis to really get healing really beginning to happen. That's why my wife does what she does with the coaching, that she does there, because it gives us an opportunity to really engage with people on a one-to-one basis. You know what I mean? And really get people the help that they need. You know what I'm saying? And that's really where deep conversation begins, where we can communicate on that level. You know what I'm saying? So it's very challenging for me right now because at times I find it very difficult to put together videos or do a video or talk about some of these things because I'm sitting up here like, okay, I'm going to mention this. I'm going to talk about this story. I'm going to talk about this, that, or whatever. Okay, now what? I talk about a solution, but then what? And because it's almost like, and people are listening, right? But are the right people listening and getting it? That's where I'm stuck. because it's one thing to preach to the choir. It's another thing when you can when when the right people that need to hear it are not only hearing it, but they're also are taking heed to it, and they're actually are getting changed as a result of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so that's where I'm really stuck with this. And like I said, it's just very, I go through days where it's very disheartening. And this is probably one of those days, because hearing about like these individuals losing their lives, and there's like nothing, you know what I mean? But if a white person was behind that, those black individuals losing their lives, there would be marches and all of that. What that tells us is that the value, we don't even value our own lives. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's really disheartening to me to see that. So it's, yeah, I just wanted to kind of share that because because how do you talk about these things to a, what we're going to call for now, a community that will always pivot to immediately blaming someone else for it? Let me share this. This was another thing that came to mind when my family and I, when we got into the Hebrew Israelite movement. And I'm gonna speak for myself, but I know I speak for my wife and all that too, right? And I shared this in a video. I still have it recorded somewhere. And we talked about the reason why we got into the Hebrew thing in the first place was because we were trying to find an explanation as to why black folks, why are we having all of these issues? And so we were just constantly looking because Christianity wasn't giving us that. It was just a boilerplate, whatever. You're in sin, and if you don't repent, you're going to go to hell, that kind of stuff. But I needed more. I needed to know, why is it that black folks are having these issues? You know what I mean? And the answers, quote unquote, that I found was in the Hebrew Israelite message. And so, but what I later discovered is that this was just another illusion. It was nothing more than my brain trying to find a reason that makes me comfortable in, okay, that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? But see, once you begin to investigate, when we look at the historicity and all of that stuff, and you realize, well, wait a minute, this so-called history that has been cobbled together, and we call it Hebrew Israelite history, it's not even accurate. That's where people really start getting scared or nervous, because wait a minute, now if you take this from me, then now I don't have any other thing to hide behind. I can't, there's no more explanation. You mean that I have to look at myself? You mean to tell me I have to hold myself accountable? You mean to tell me that I'm on the hook? I got to make change? Oh, no, 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 no. I can't do that. No, no, it's got to be a judgment. It's got to be that we're cursed. It's got to be that, it was something my ancestors did. It's got to be something that white people did. It's got to be whatever. It's got to be something. It's got to be someone or something that I can blame. Because if you take away my religion, if you take away this Hebrew thing, then I don't have anything else to explain it. So I have to hold on to this. And that's what you see a lot of people love. And I'm speaking many to some of you who may be in that space. That's what it is. That's what it is. It is your brain's projection on trying to protect itself and trying to give explanation. The brain does this all the time, literally all the time. And it's not just Hebrew stuff, it's just every day. Every day we are finding ourselves, there are many people who, there will be an all-out gun battle right in our own backyard. And then the moment we say, hey, listen, we got to do better, we can't allow this stuff to happen, we got to raise a standard, then the pivot is automatically, okay, but what about those people over there? What about those white people over there? Or what about those Hispanics over there? Or what about this over here? You know what I'm saying? And it's just, Someone asked, they said, you don't think adherence to the Bible encourages self accountability? It does to a measure. It does to a measure. However, there are many, when you read the Bible, it does, on one hand, it will say, first of all, the Bible says all have sinned and have fallen short, right? We can agree with that. You can go right in the Bible. It says that it talks about how we were born into sin. I strongly disagree with that. You would not. There is no way in the world that the on one hand the same source can say that you were born in the image of God, that you were born good. Remember what did the Bible says? God says that everything He created was good. But then later on, because of one person's actions, now we're to believe that everybody by default you're born sinful. In other words, you're born deficient. You understand? But everything we see as far as how the human body works, how it operates, and all of that, there is nothing evil about that. You understand what I'm saying? Do you understand that? In other words, you look at babies, look at little children, the innocence of children. You're going to tell me that a child is by default evil? I want you to really think about that, okay? By default, is evil. When we look at the book of Revelations, for example, it talks about judgment that's going to hit the world. And it talks about how one third of the trees are going to be burnt and vegetation, and one third of the oceans are going to be. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really take the time and really process this. Why are animals and trees being judged? What exactly did they do? Now, in other words, like, you have to be specific, no guessing, but be very specific. Why are animals being judged? Why is the Bible saying that these animals are going to be punished by being annihilated? Trees and plants, why are they going to be punished? Why are the seas going to automatically turn into blood? Where things are, these living creatures who are just going about their lives, they're going to be punished. Now, the Christian response would be, well, it's because there's some things we just don't understand. Okay, if you don't understand it, then why are you trying to give me an explanation? And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying, let's really flesh that out a little bit. Do you understand? So we just kind of, in the Christian world, in the Christian mind, a lot of times we kind of just go with the flow and just say, well, there's just some things we're just not going to understand, and and all of that. But what I'm doing is encouraging you to ask questions, to investigate and think about these things. You understand what I'm saying? So, yes, on one hand, that the Bible does encourage you to do self-inspection, but if the self-inspection begins with automatically saying that, well, by default, we're all sinful, then that's something that I just simply, I'm sorry, I just don't agree with that, because I can look at nature and see that clearly there are a lot of things that are not evil at all. You know what I'm saying? He said, I agree with most of you on this, and honestly don't have an answer to the default we're born evil. But here's my experience: Hebrews tends to hold themselves and our people to a very high standard. Well, if that is true, there are a lot of Hebrews. If you're talking Hebrew Israelites, there are many Hebrew Israelites that are doing a lot of things, regardless of the sect, that are doing some things that are not good. And I've seen Hebrews, and this ties in to the greater conversation that we're having about the black community, where things are defended, things are accepted, and the quick pivot is, well, that's their interpretation, and their interpretation is not the true interpretation. Well, you're going to find the same thing within Christendom. You know how many different denominations of Christianity where everybody's saying that, well, they have the wrong interpretation of it? So it's not built in. Now, you and your own small circle may hold yourselves accountable for things, but the greater world does not. It doesn't. It really doesn't. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm saying, that we have to start being honest when it comes to that, you know, and because a lot of times people We don't want to be honest with those things. You know what I mean? Like, for example, I talk about all the time, the wind is picking up now, so I got to hold the microphone closer. I talk about all the time, like, for example, the Hebrews that are in Demona, you know, right now, a few years ago, up to a few years ago, they were just seen as, on one hand, the greater Hebrew community, let's say here in the United States, will saw them as, okay, they're cool, those are our people and they're claiming the land and all that stuff. But then all of a sudden, when these stories start coming out of some of the things that was really going on there, all of a sudden it's like, well, it's easy to deflect, it's easy to deviate and say, well, they're not us, or to divest. And I find that happening a whole lot. You know what I mean? To take accountability is to accept accountability, is to accept that, hey, listen, I was wrong or we were wrong. But the mindset that I'm seeing a lot of today is a lot of people don't want to do that. And that's what's very troubling. And I'm seeing that with men, and I'm also seeing that with women. And so a lot of people just, so when you're talking with people who have this immediate reaction to deflect and to blame the government, blame this and blame that or whatever, um, it's hard to move forward. You can't build with individuals who are always pointing the other way to the other guy. You can't build with that. I mean, that's impossible. It's impossible to build with people who won't say, you know what, I messed up. You can't do it. It's an illusion. It's a delusion to think that you can build with individuals who will never take responsibility for anything. And this is the dilemma that I find myself in, is that it's a lot easier for me to, I can do, there are many people who are doing videos, who have channels like mine, who will always can can do videos and they'll get thousands and thousands of views pointing out the things that people are doing to us black folks, right? But when you start talking about, hey, what are some things we can do to confront these very issues, you know, that are really destabilizing our families, our relationship with each other, a lot of people don't want to get there. And I'll close out with this. Like, our focus on this platform is to get as many people as possible, recovered from diabetes and high blood pressure. I'm not letting go of that. That is just my whole thing, right? Folks, listen, it is not as hard as you think it is. It really isn't. It is not a hard task. It just takes commitment. The problem is a lot of people don't want to make that commitment. You know what I'm saying? So it's easy to complain about, well, the government is not giving us our medicine and they're putting, look at what these food manufacturers, what they're putting in our food and all of that stuff. So it's easy to point to all of these other things instead of, hey, let's work on our self discipline. Let's figure out a way that we can discipline ourselves so that we can become, bulletproof, so to speak, right? And so that's a very hard task. And again, let me remind you, it is not exclusive to black people. All groups have their own issues that they have to work through. But it's like I said again, it comes back to, I want to start with the backyard that I'm in, like literally, right? So, but yeah, so that's just, I'm just sharing a few thoughts on things I've just been going through my mind and how difficult it can be to talk about these things. Like I was saying, this weekend, there was a lot of things that I, either on the news or other things that I was seeing, and it was just like, I want to mention these things. I want to talk about these things, but man, it's like, is it going to even go anywhere? You know what I mean? Because people a lot of times just get offended and they pivot because it's convenient. You know what I mean? And I'm saying it's time for us to stop doing that. Um, just hearing those stories about those children dying, um, it just, I can never get used to that. I can never get used to that. of people getting shot, and it's like, did a white person do it? Oh well, hey, that's just niggas being niggas. That's all. I don't want to take that attitude. No, that's wrong. How can we stop this? You know what I mean? And to answer that, we got to take some accountability. We got to take some ownership. And unfortunately, we live in a world today where a lot of people don't want to do that. So, anyway, someone said which children? There was a 16-year-old girl that got shot and killed in Atlanta. It was at the 404 festival. Like I said, that must be something. I haven't been in Atlanta in years, but it was a festival in Piedmont Park. And for the most part, from what I understand, everything was fine. It was people, black folks getting together, just hanging out, having a good time. But of course, it didn't take much, you know, all of a sudden one person didn't like the other person, and then guns come out, and a young girl caught a bullet and she died. Other people, I think it was like 7 8 people, were injured. There was another case. It was a young girl a little girl. It was another part of Atlanta, I think it was. I'm not sure, but she caught a bullet and died. Those are just two cases, but there's other cases as well that I can really, like, if I wanted to, I can go through and talk about those too. But it just gets tiring after a while because there's low interest in talking about those things. And what we try to do here is to try to, we talk about it, but we also try to figure out, okay, what are some practical things we can do to stop these things? And that's what we try to do here. And so, and we're going to continue to do that. So, anyway, just a stream of thought there. I saw my dear sister, she was adding some stuff here. Hold on. Learn helplessness gets the clicks. It does. It does. Share your thoughts. I will say this. I will ask this kindly in the comment section below. Share your thoughts on. I'll be very interested to hear some of your thoughts on it. Not so much in the chat, but in the comments. Oh shoot, hold on. You can advocate for change, but you also have to detach yourself from the outcome. And that's hard. It's true. And I was just reading something just before I got on here. It's at a certain point you have to, because for me, I'm always hopeful for a big outcome. I don't want to see people fail. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to see people repeating the same mistakes over and over again. I don't want to continue to see that and allow my brain to normalize that. But I also have to keep telling myself that there are numbers of people who just won't get it. Their brains are basically broken in that regard. And what I try to do here is try to tell people, hey, there is a way to unbreak your brain and to heal it. And that's what we try to do here. And so, but yeah, so that's it. That's all I want to share. And that's it. So, hey, you guys, just something to think about. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And thank you so much, each and every one of you. You guys take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I know I am. It's a very beautiful evening here in Arizona. And you guys take care. And I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.